All right, I'm Sasha Nicole.
And I'm Star.
And I'm Dr. T.
This is American Therapy, the definitive podcast on all things Black mental health. And of course, we are back in our virtual sessions that we've been having post-COVID. I think we're kind of liking this whole virtual thing. What you guys think?
Yeah, it's kind of growing on us.
I think we have done a great job at being agile.
Pivoting, which leads me to our show today. Yeah, so we have the Georgetown Pivot Program from obviously Georgetown University, and we are super excited. And so we are going to talk about the impact and the influence of that program and how it has been very beneficial. So we're going to get right into it. All right. So we are joined by Chandra Adams. And Chandra is one of the fellows. She's always loved home. She previously started 2 businesses in real estate and as a real estate investment company and real estate brokerage company. She completed courses towards a bachelor's degree at the University of Arizona and became a registered investment advisor. Ultimately, she wants to start a real estate development company and is exploring issues around low-income housing in DC. She's also immersed herself in the issue of support for children of the incarcerated, and she has written a business plan for a nonprofit to address the needs of these children and continues to be inspired by her tight-knit family, including her 3 daughters. We also have the other fellow who goes by Mimi. She's originally from Nigeria. Mimi came to the United States via the Niger Delta Scholarship Award on a full study abroad scholarship from the Office of the President. Upon her arrival to the U.S., she completed a summer bridge program at Northeastern University and then transferred to the University of Lynchburg, where she earned her Bachelor's of Arts in Communication Studies with the emphasis in social influence. During her Bachelor of Arts, she worked at the Business Office Department as a student worker. And following the semester, she was accepted to the university's Master of Arts program in Nonprofit Leadership Studies. She was also a member of the debate team, both undergraduate and graduate student. And she is also a poet and plans to publish her first book of poetry. And then we also have Pietra Rivoli, who is joining us from the program, and she'll be joining us in a few minutes. She's a professor in the McDonald School of Business. She teaches finance and international business in the undergraduate program. She has special interests in social justice issues and international business and in China. She regularly leads MBA residencies to China. Her academic research has been published in numerous journals. She was awarded a Faculty Pioneer Award by the Aspen Institute. This award recognizes business school faculty who have been leaders in the integration of social and environmental issues into MBA curricula. Professor Rivoli has a book called The Travels of a T-Shirt in the Global Economy. She has been widely acclaimed by both the popular press and the academic community as a path-breaking study of globalization. Her book has received numerous awards, and these honors include being named one of the best business books of the year by the Financial Times, Booz Allen Hamilton, I used to work for them, Foreign Affairs, Library Journey, and Amazon.com. And so why we're here in general is to talk about the importance of this program, what it does. And so basically the Georgetown Pivot Program, it's a new non-credit bearing certificate in business and entrepreneurship, which was created specifically for formerly incarcerated individuals. Designed in partnership with the DC Department of Employment Services and delivered by Georgetown faculty, the program is a 1-year transition and re-entry program centered on a blend of academic work and supported employment. And so given the topics that we've had around incarceration, this is a great program and opportunity for people who have been formerly incarcerated. So we'll start with you, Chandra, if you could just kind of share your story as to how you started the program, just a background of your story in terms of incarceration, and then also we'll go to you, Mimi, after Chandra.
Okay, so thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here. A little bit about my story. So essentially, my story is what I've come to find out is kind of a common story amongst many women who find themselves incarcerated. I found myself trusting the wrong person, and based on being loyal to, trusting, and in a relationship with someone who didn't necessarily have my best interest at heart. I made a series of choices, and ultimately, those choices led me to become incarcerated for a period of 7 months. So I actually had an 8-month sentence, but I was sentenced to 7 months at a federal prison camp, actually in West Virginia. And it was a very interesting experience. I learned a lot during that time. I learned a lot about myself more specifically during that time. It was, as strange as it may sound, it was one of the best experiences of my life because it gave me an opportunity to be alone, to be by myself. You know, I was previously married with children. And so really it was like the first time really since college that I had alone. And so it was valuable. And during that time, during the incarceration is actually when I recognized the need for additional support for children of the incarcerated. I myself was fortunately blessed, but that wasn't the case for many of the women there. And so I actually had my sister sending me statistical data on children of the incarcerated. And so as my sister was sending me this information, she actually happened upon the Pivot program. And so she sent me information about it and I read it and I'm like, this is perfect. I'm like, this sounds like me. You know, this sounds like exactly what I want and what I've been looking for. And so she said the same thing. She thought that it was perfect for me. And upon my release, I applied and went through the application process, and there's an assessment period and so forth. And then here I am.
Awesome. So Chandra, can you, and I'm sorry, I'm on mute because of my dog and you know how life happens, right? So, you know, your story is so key, but can you share like a little bit about like how your story is not unusual? You know, I think like, I know I would sit here, I've worked in prisons before, so I have that insight, but before I worked in prisons, I had no idea of like how many quote unquote normal people like are in prison, like that anyone could kind of, especially anyone being a Black woman, most importantly, could end up within that system.
It was, I'm glad you asked the question. For me, I'm definitely the last one that anyone in my family or anyone who knows me would have expected to go to prison, especially myself. I mean, if you would, I just couldn't have imagined like ending up in prison, and really, I did everything that I could to not go. My family did everything that they could to keep me from going. I really didn't have, you know, just much experience with like incarceration. In terms of just having people around me who had a history of incarceration. And so I really didn't know what to expect outside of like seeing like Orange is the New Black and, you know, and those kinds of like shows on TV. So I really didn't know what it was going to be. And so, you know, I was fortunate enough actually to have a life coach before I went to prison. And she actually was able to prepare me for what that experience would be. And so she kind of gave me some parameters. She, you know, told me that rather than viewing it as like the worst thing ever, she told me that I would come to find it as probably one of the best, most rewarding experiences or whatever that I ever would have. And she's absolutely been correct. I can share more about that a little bit later. But, you know, one of the key things that she told me was that, you know, you're going to go there and you're going to find a lot of really normal women. She was like, you're going to be surprised at the number of women that you find there who would be your friends outside of, you know, outside of incarceration. And she was absolutely right. I met all kinds of brilliant, amazing, incredible, normal women, you know, and what I found was they were some of the, they were so helpful, so supportive, and it was so wonderful to share that experience with other women who, for me, felt very much like they could have been me. You know, like these are women who could be my friends outside of incarceration. And so it was just astounding to see just the number of women who were there just for any number of reasons. And so specifically us, specifically African-American women, it was really, it was challenging to see how many African-American women were there.
Mimi, can you share your story?
Hi, everyone. Thank you also for having me. So just as Chandra, everything was going well. I was in school. working, doing the right things, right? And just like her as well, I trusted the wrong person and got in a situation that I shouldn't have been in. And during that whole time, it just felt like that was the end for me, right? Because I had a whole plan for myself. I had a goal for myself. You finish your bachelor's, you do your master's, and then a PhD, and everything else, and then get married. The whole thing, right? And so it was like at that moment, it was a turn, and he had moved away from the things that I had already planned. And so being in that space, there are lots of things that I learned that I didn't know previously. And at this point in my life, I don't regret it. And I was having a conversation with Chandra one time, and I told her the day I stepped into jail, the day the doors were closed, that's when opportunities began to open for me. There are places that I am today that would never have thought that I would be, just because of that situation. So it was just turning that negativity into something more positive and striving to do better and still being on the same track as where I was before.
Dr. T, can you weigh in here? Because they both seem to have like a very parallel perspective that I think a lot of our audience and listeners will be like, how could you be so positive and optimistic and resilient? Like, I'm telling you, if they lock my ass up, let me tell you, because I worked in prisons for a year in California Department of Corrections. Look, I'm not strong like y'all. So what do you give us weigh in?
Yeah.
I was just about to say Dr. T, because
Well, I hope that, and I hope that maybe Molly or someone will talk a little bit more about what the Pivot program is, and is this a model in around the country? Is this something unique to DC? But it sounds like what both of these ladies did is, number one, they have an incredible amount of resiliency, which all of us have. All of us have the ability to take lemons and make lemonade, right? It depends on how you approach it. You heard them talk about how they took a difficult situation that they thought was going to be a deal breaker and change the course of their life. And because they were able to learn from it, be introspective, take opportunities and seek out opportunities, they were able to take those lemons and make lemonade. And now they're on a course not only to change and help their own lives, but to help the lives of other people. And so that is a gift that they're probably right. They may not have had if they not have had that experience in the past. So all of us have the capacity to do that. Not all of us take advantage of that capacity. And I would bet that, given the right opportunity, you ladies would make the same choice. But it feels like, as these ladies so eloquently described, when you're in that moment and the judge says guilty and here's your sentence, you just think that, so it's not like it happened overnight. I'm sure they would both tell us it took some time, that they had a process that they went through, but because they were willing to go through that process, and they didn't get stuck in self-pity or in shame or in blame or in guilt, that they were able to take advantage of this opportunity to learn about themselves, learn about their communities, and then commit themselves to filling a need or a void in their communities.
Dr. T, do you, when you typically see someone who may have dealt with incarceration, do you often see that it's typical? Because when I think about the people that we know who have been incarcerated, it's very rare that you find that they have the capacity, to be able to do that. Or even when we talk in the terms of people have so many misconceptions of normalcy in prison or going to jail in general. And I think that has often, and this is, I think, is a timely conversation, because when you look at how especially Black people have been villainized on if they have gone to jail, if they have, committed any type of crime, then it automatically is supposed to make you a bad person, and that it's not, that you can't be normal if you have been in that situation, rather than looking at it from the perspective of, quote unquote, whatever you define as normal. Make people in general can make bad decisions, and find themselves.
And not only that, everybody makes bad decisions each and every day. One of the things that our show on, criminalization, when we have that show, it will talk about the disparities. There are probably many people that did what these ladies did, but because they're women of color and they were sitting in front of a judge, their sentence was more harsh. There, things that, another person of another race may have gotten community service, right? So I think that's how we get to the place where, normal quote unquote people can find themselves in very bad situations. But you're right, Sasha, I have worked with people who have been incarcerated, and I've worked with people who've done, the highest crimes that you can commit in this country, and they're not bad people either. All of us, depending on the circumstance, depending on our background, could be in situations where we can make choices that, don't represent who we are today or who we'll be in the future. And so it could be some simple charge that ends you up in, if you're a person of color in particular, we know there's disparity in sentencing laws. We know there's disparity in charges. There's all kinds of challenges that end up more people of color being imprisoned for small crimes that, in other communities just wouldn't end up that way. So you have that part where I think it lends itself to explaining why so many quote unquote normal people. And then you have the judicial system, which is biased against people of color. I mean, I know a judge that has gone to prison, federal prison. I know a person who was an elected official. These are normal people. And the decisions they made, while not great, they weren't something that you think would end somebody up in federal prison for 3 or 4 years. So it's a combination of who we are, what experiences we've been through, but also a criminal justice system that just isn't fair to Black people and people of color.
Commend you, ladies, because I've been to just about every prison and work camp in the state of California, and I was shocked to see. I always just thought women's prisons would be, I don't know, better than men's prisons. I was shocked, the stuff that the women had to go through, but to keep their own just sanity and dignity, that you guys have walked out intact and even better off. Molly, can you talk a little bit about the structure of the Pivot Program and why this might actually be a transformative model as we start looking at reforming the entirety of the justice system?
And I want to jump in here and just say Molly Fleener is the communications director of the Georgetown Pivot Program. So
thank you. So nice to be here with all of you. And, I'm really, I'm trying to track down Pietra right now because she's really the spokesperson about the Pivot Program. But it really has been a pleasure to work with Chandra and Mimi and all of the Pivot Fellows to really help elevate their stories and just highlight what a wonderful program this is to help transform their experiences and what a great partnership it's been for Georgetown. So I'm really hoping that Pietra can come on momentarily to speak more about that.
Could either one of Mimi or Chandra talk about what you do in the program and why you feel it was so helpful to you in crystallizing where you are now and where you plan to go in the future?
Sure. Would you like, I can go. So for me, I knew that I wanted to return to school. And so the Pivot Program was the perfect opportunity for me to do that, to, kind of get into the program, and just because it's been a while since I've been in school. But I knew that I wanted to go back. I knew that I wanted to complete my degree. And so being in the Pivot Program has been fantastic because you really are learning. I mean, they really are real classes. And so, there's, we've had entrepreneurship. We have an entrepreneurship class that we've been taking. We've had an economics class. We've had accounting. We've had business communication. So all kinds of courses over the last 10 months to definitely, for me, help me to get my feet wet. And so I am actually going to be taking some more summer courses and then hoping to transfer to Georgetown in the fall. There's Pietra. But it's been a phenomenal program. I mean, being in the program, I've met some amazing people. There have been incredible opportunities that we've been afforded. It is the fact that we're now a part of the Georgetown family, and so there's this amazing network that we have that we can, you know, lean upon, is also incredible. And so, like, currently I'm developing like a business idea, and there are all these brilliant minds who are available to help me to get to where it is that I want to go. And so I've owned businesses in the past, but it's like, you know, it's like this business school education that you're getting, and really it's for free, and like they're paying me to be in the program. Like, it's unbelievable. The program has been phenomenal. Like, I can't say enough about it. And you know, it's like the sense of family that you get. And so the leadership is incredible. Like, Pietra's amazing. I'll just say that now. She's incredible. Mark is also incredible. And the professors we've had are incredible. And then really our fellow cohort members are also incredible. It's, you have this opportunity to create this relationship with all of these people who have like shared experiences. And so while our experiences are all different, we have that commonality. And so it's been incredible. It's been an amazing experience. And now Mimi is like one of my best friends. She's like my sister. And
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah.
We just got Pietra, you just joined us. So we want to understand like what this program actually is, and like, could this potentially be like a model that could be leveraged elsewhere? Is this the new wave of justice reform? You know, given justice, the whole justice system is on the table right now to be reformed. You're on mute.
You know, what I tell the Pivot Fellows is, you know, just as they're starting their own businesses, I view Pivot as a startup too. You know, we're only in our second year. And so everything that, you know, they're learning about starting businesses, you know, we're kind of right alongside them, trying to start something at the same time. You know, everybody that starts something dreams that it will become big, right? And certainly our dream for the Pivot program is that we develop a model that can be replicated. I mean, we have a partnership, you know, our partnership with the DC government, the Department of Employment Services is, you know, really the critical piece of this whole program. And there's no reason that, you know, across the country, we couldn't see local governments that are working towards, you know, pathways to employment work alongside business schools. It's really an ideal partnership. So, you know, we would love to see it replicated. You know, as I say, that's kind of every entrepreneur's dream. And it's we clearly have a broken pipeline in this country. You know, we have so many places where our system is broken. So the question is, you know, where can a business school come in to be a part of the solution? You know, a business school can't do anything directly, you know, about, you know, the awful things going on, for example, with our police forces. You know, we don't have that expertise. We don't have a way to plug into that issue. But we do have a way to plug into, you know, creating business, creating, helping people be ready for employment, helping people be productive inside organizations. I mean, that's what we do.
Mimi, can you go ahead and share what the program has done for you?
Yes. So first, I haven't been out for a whole year. I've only been out for 11 months now. And so I got out on 29th of July. The program started in September, right? So now getting out of jail, getting out, right? Starting my life over and everything, it would have been confusing. I wouldn't know where I would have started from. Pivot it was like I got out and jumped into this, and it's just been phenomenal. I went right back to school, right back to chasing my goals, like I mentioned previously, and just being in a space, because I've always wanted to own my own business, but the route to take and the different things in regards to business and entrepreneurship things to learn I didn't know. And so being in the program, just learning all these new things about business and meeting all these different people that, you know, that just the opportunity and everything, it's just been great. Because like I said, I really wouldn't have known what to do coming out from that space. And also just being in that space too, and pushing to write my book, well, to publish my book. It's been great. It's changed me in various ways. And I'm just thankful. I say that every time. I'm just so thankful.
I think one of the things that you're hearing from both of the ladies is that whether the program intentionally plans to instill hope or not, that is one of the things that you're hearing loud and clear from this lady's, a sense of hope and a reconnection to their sense of purpose. And we all do better when we're in a situation where we're connected to our purpose and we have a sense of hope that allows our dreams to become fulfilled and to burst forth, and the support. And so, you know, it's refreshing to know that this opportunity is out there. And I'm sure there are other things around the country. You know, it would be interesting to see the data in a couple of years and to learn how this other states, because Pietra is absolutely right. There are other partnerships, and they may not be as advanced as this. They may not include a university. But, you know, the real lesson is, regardless of where you've been or what you've done, there's hope and things can always be turned around.
How important structurally, like, what are all the moving pieces as part of getting out of prison or jail? Because, like, I know working in that system, there's like a level of complexity. When you come out, you got to report to like 5 different people. It seems like every 6 hours or so. Like, how do you wedge in this kind of a program for those folks that are listening that may want to be like, oh, I want to do something like this in my community, in my city? Like, how did you work all those moving pieces of a person coming out of the system?
So I can tell you what my experience was. For me, I was released to go to home confinement. However, with DC, I had to make a pit stop at a halfway house, which I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta go to a halfway house. I'm like, oh my God, I've really been in prison. And so that was definitely interesting. But even that experience wasn't as awful as I thought that it was going to be. You know, it was definitely a challenge. It was interesting. But for me, every step of the way, I've met people who have helped me to further my purpose. And so even in that space, you know, there were blessings there. And so, so from the halfway house, I came home, and I was home for like a week, and I was like on an ankle monitor. So that was interesting. That was interesting.
You got that new jewelry.
Yeah, I mean, it was uncomfortable. And so you're showering with this thing on, and you have to like plug your leg up to the wall like it's your phone charger.
Randomly, my uncle went to prison and came back on house arrest. My family's gonna be mad about this. We were like little kids, and we didn't know what it was. And we're like, oh, what is that on your leg? You got a beeper on your leg. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, they told me, they were like, you could leave. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere with this thing on my leg. I'm gonna wait the week, and then you're gonna take it off my ankle, and then we'll be okay. I didn't leave, honestly, my house with the ankle monitor on. And then after the ankle monitor was off, it was having to like get my car registered. And so it was like really picking up and starting all over again. And it was, for me, it was interesting. I was fortunate in that really I returned, like I was on leave of absence from my job. So I returned to a job. Yeah, I was incredibly blessed. I returned to my same home. But what was different was me. And so, but then there were still these things that I had to do. And I honestly found that I was overwhelmed, because it was just so, moving from this little cinder block, I don't even remember what the dimensions were, maybe like 8 by 6 inch space or whatever, with like bunks. We were like in this open dormitory style kind of space with like maybe 100 and something other women on our unit, right? And so to being back in my own space where I could just like stretch out, it was interesting because I really didn't stretch out. I kind of found myself kind of still being in that same kind of, I kept myself kind of in the same sort of space. One of the conditions of my release was that I have like this psychological assessment. And so at some point I was diagnosed with like adjustment disorder or something like that, which I found interesting considering that my sentence was really only for 7 months. But it did take a while to get comfortable just like being out, like really, which was really strange, like going to stores and just like, I just couldn't wait to get back home, you know, or just to like leave those spaces or whatever. It just kind of felt uncomfortable. But for me, it was a process of, like I said, I had to, the company that I worked for, I had to get fingerprinted all over again and do like a background check and just kind of restarting, like rebooting. But it wasn't nearly as challenging for me as I think it would be for like a lot of other people. I was actually really fortunate. Yeah, I was really fortunate. And so it was just really a matter of getting the assessment done for Georgetown and telling my employer, I love you guys are awesome, but there's this an incredible opportunity waiting for me. So I'll see you on the other side of this kind of thing. And then I started the program, and then that was pretty much it. I didn't look back.
Pietra,
We might have had more challenges.
Pietra, can you speak to people who are interested in coming into the fellows program and just some of like that criteria, or, you know, because what I'm hearing is that not only, as Dr. T said, that these ladies had an immense amount of hope, but by being part of this program, it added on to the possibilities and the hope of what they could do, therefore, after, you know, being incarcerated, and not letting it be a hindrance. And oftentimes you hear men and women who've been incarcerated who feel like almost like life is over, like it's a defeat, because, you know, a lot of times employers don't want to hire people who have been, you know, to prison or anything like that. So can you talk just a little bit about, you know, more information about the program? What is, like I said, what is some criteria, and how you just continue to provide that beacon of opportunity for people who are coming through the program?
You know, if we were going to try to describe what we're doing in just one sentence, I would say we want to give people a whole different idea of the possible. And, you know, I think that's what you've heard from both Mimi and Chandra, you know, is a way of looking forward and seeing new possibilities. And we're looking, you know, for people who do look forward naturally, right? But what they need are some help through some very tough systemic barriers that people face coming out of incarceration and entering the workforce. I mean, I would invite any employer in this city to come join this call and meet Chandra and meet Mimi, and they're going to want to hire them. But we've got to get to that point. We've got to say, you know, let us introduce you. Let us show you who our Pivot Fellows are, what they can do, how their future is not going to be defined by their past. So, you know, when you think about the criteria for admissions, you know, first of all, I should say it is quite competitive. Last year we had about 100 inquiries, and from those initial applications that people fill out, we selected about half of those for a phone interview. And in a phone interview, you can learn a lot. You know, you can learn about, you know, what somebody's frame of mind is, what they're thinking about their next steps, what they'd like to achieve. And if the phone interview goes well, we then move to a series of assessments, you know, because these are classes, you know, taught at the university level by university faculty. And so a certain level of academic preparation is needed. And so, you know, all of our fellows have a high school degree or a GED at a minimum. many, Mimi, as you know, is a college graduate. We have fellows with advanced degrees, but a certain level of academic preparation is necessary to be able to take advantage of what we do. So we have to screen for that. We also do a psychological assessment. And then finally, we do an in-person interview as well. So it's kind of a long process, or not long really in terms of the calendar, but it has multiple steps. But I think that, through this, very careful process, we get to know people before they even join us. And as you can see, and I think as Mimi and Chandra have talked about, we're also looking for people who want to contribute to and belong to a community, because they need to be supporting each other, and they always do.
Dr. T, weigh in here on the support like people need when they come out of prison, and how can they tap into that? Because you've run a system before, so where do they get that support?
So one of the things that both of the ladies said and Pietra just echoed, I actually did a training on self-care this morning, and there's research dating all the way back to the 1999s, and back 20 years ago, that shows that one of the best ways to deal with stress is to have a group of people who've been through the same thing you've been through.
Mm-hmm.
And so these ladies are exemplifying that, they were in prison and they saw people who looked like them, but in the program, they see people, because a lot of times when you get out of prison and you go back into your communities, people look at you different. They haven't had the same experience as you. So even though you were a part of that community before, suddenly you're an outcast in your own community. And so having this type of program helps them have a peer group of like-minded people who've been through a difficult situation, are working their way through on the other side. And it gives them then, I think, more courage and support to reconnect to their own communities, wherever that is, be it city, region, culture, whatever kind of community it is they're connecting to. So that particular piece, I think, is so key, that we all need like-minded people who can relate to where we are. And this is, even though it's common, it's still a unique enough experience that, it's difficult. And even if everybody believes that you are innocent, which in our community is often the case, when you come out, they still treat you like you were guilty. Right? And so what Pietra also says is that even if your charge is minor, employers are going to just throw out your application and not look at the quality of the person and the quality of their academic rigor or their experiences, just because that mark is on their record. And so to have this opportunity, when you get out, either shortly or at some point after being incarcerated, is really phenomenal.
So Mimi, can you share with us just a little bit more about your story, how long you were actually incarcerated, given, I know it mentioned you're Nigerian. I'm not sure what was going on with the citizenship during that time, but just one, share your story as to how you even got to incarceration, like what happened, and then two, how long you were incarcerated and what that looked like for you.
Okay, so before incarceration, so first I came to America on an F1 student visa, and so I was incarcerated I was in jail for 17 months, and on the day of my release, so now they're like, so this day I'm supposed to go home and everything, and then I'm waiting in the holding cell to leave, and then they tell me, you're not leaving. And I'm like, why? And they said, because ICE is here to get you. You have a detainer that has been placed on you. And here I am. I've never been in trouble. Nobody in my family has ever been in jail or nothing, right? So this is nothing I know. So it's like, this has happened to me. And at this point, I'm about to see freedom. And here I am about to start all over again. And so they take me into ICE's custody. And I'm in there I stayed there for 2 months, and they gave me a bond, right? and I'm only out right now on an ICE bond. I'm still going through ICE's proceedings as we speak. But yeah.
Which was worse, ICE or like being locked up with ICE or the jail? I should say what was worse. I mean, but I'm just nosy.
Yes. I mean, both. I would say both. At the end of the day, the thing with incarceration, it has to do with you. It's how you take it. It's the same thing, honestly. But it had to do with me internally, mentally. So whether I was in jail or in the ICE detention center, it didn't change a thing. I just had to make sure I tell myself from the beginning. I kept telling myself, Mimi, don't ever be institutionalized, because I adapt easily, right? I adapt easily. I could be in a place right now and I've only been here for a whole week and it feels like I've been here for a whole year. I had to tell myself, do not adapt, because the moment you adapt, that's it for you, right? So yeah, both of them, it was the same.
So you have a book, right? Like, you're leaving some things out, girl.
Oh,
Let's
yes,
get a
I have.
So you have a book. What's going on with, what are you currently working on? Because, you know, as we talked about the reframing and sharing your story, it's an incredible story, because we often, and I'll say it, even as, you know, being Black or considered middle class, it's like we have this concept that certain things just don't apply or can touch us. And I think we lose our sense of relatability or empathy for others easily. So, you know, this is important to be reminded, like, wow, you know, because I've met you in passing before, and it's like you would never know that this is the experience that you've had or that you're going through. So what are some of the things that you're working on?
So I have, my book is coming out at the end of this month. It's a book of poem. And so before incarceration, I wanted to publish a book. So I'd written a voluminous amount of poetry to publish. But during my incarceration, I'd lost everything. Everything was thrown out of my apartment. So I lost the manuscript for the book I was going to publish. So during that space, I had the time to rewrite all my poems, not the same ones, but better, right? So I wrote poetry almost every single day. And when you read my book, every single poem is dated. I wrote poetry. Poetry helped me escape from that space, right? So I wrote poems not every day, but almost every day. And so now my book is a combination of all the poems that I wrote. And it's 99% of my poems are the poems I wrote in that space. And it's titled, so my name is Izwoire, and it's titled Izwo, just the first half of my name. And my name means the woman that saved me. And Izwo means savior. Ire is woman. So that's what the book is, Izwo, savior.
Wow.
And yeah, and it's going to be out at the end of the month. I am excited. Like I said, I wanted to publish for a long time, but I never had the chance to. And it's like, I haven't been out for a whole year and the book is about to come out. Thankful, right? I'm so humble and just so grateful.
Mimi, can you spell it so when our folks can hear this, they can start putting it on Amazon and look for and buy it?
Sure, it's spelled IZUO-. It's going to be on Amazon, Exlibris.com, Barnes & Noble, and my websites as well. And my website is just my first name, Izwoire.com.
Are you allowed to share the story of how you ended up incarcerated? Are you allowed to speak on that?
Well, I can say like the basis of it, but not going deeply. So I knew a guy, my ex-boyfriend, that I was involved with, and everything just went left. I thought I knew this person, and come to find out that he wasn't who I thought he was, and it was a fraud case, and then I was incarcerated.
Look, we understand because you got an ongoing ICE situation. Look.
That's right.
Yeah. And Chandra, you were speaking of some things that you were also working on. What were you speaking on? Can you share some of that as well?
Sure. So I'm actually developing a business idea for. There's a pitch competition that we actually have that's coming up in July. So we're working towards for the pitch competition, working towards, completing our business ideas or fully developing them. And so for me, mine is real estate development because I have a background in real estate development. I'm a former real estate broker. And so development is something that I've always wanted to do. And then through incarceration, it was just kind of like, okay, so you're going to do the nonprofit to help the children and you're going to be a real estate developer. And so, and you're just not going to keep putting that off. And so it's interesting that Dr. T was talking about lemons and lemonade. My business is going to be developing transitional housing for single moms and their children who are in transitional periods in their lives. And so really the concept is to help women turn their lemons into lemonade. And so the name of the development company is Lemonade Development.
Yeah.
And so
I'm nosy. I want to know, how are you, like, for somebody listening, is like, okay, I'm in a similar situation. Like, I'm a business person, so like, how are you piecing it together? How are you funding it? Because real estate development is expensive. And like, where you get the resolve to do all of that in this space? I'm astonished.
Really, I've always been so like, anyone who knows me knows that, when I set my mind to doing something, I'm going to do it, so it wasn't that I'm just going to become a real estate agent. I'm going to become a real estate broker. And not only am I going to become a real estate broker, but I'm going to own my own brokerage. And so, that's always been in me. And so although I didn't graduate college, I started, but I didn't finish. But again, that was, life happened, right? I got married and, had kids and that sort of thing. But everyone else in my family has degrees, right? And so, I'm from that upper middle class family. And it's the expectation that I have for myself, that I'm going to, do something, but not only am I going to do something, but I'm going to do something that's going to benefit and help other people. And so, there are these other women. So during my incarceration, my friends were attorneys, my friends were all entrepreneurs, my friends were, CEOs of school districts. And so I had all these incredible women around me. And it's like, what are we going to do when we get out of here? Like, what are they going to do when they come home? Like, what are they going to do, right? And so the idea is to work with women, like middle income earning women who are single mothers in transitional periods, because there were really not resources available for that segment of the population or that demographic. I mean, you have something for women who are like lower income, and then women who have the means, right? But like when you're in the middle, it's like you're trying to be upwardly, ambitious, and you're trying to do these things or whatever and get to these places or whatever, but you've got kids. So you've got this 24-hour job because you're already a mom, and then you're still trying to work, and you're still trying to network, and you're still trying to do all of these incredible things or whatever that you could do if you had a partner. But because you're alone, you find that you may not have the support to create a space that's like a sisterhood for women, where really the idea is a communal sort of development where women are sharing the responsibility. So like, if I need to study, maybe I'm in school and I need to study, then I've got sisters who are there who can watch my kids while I'm studying.
And I gotta attest to that, because as Star knows, I was considered a middle class single parent, and I can tell you without doubt that would have been something that would have been so helpful for me in my life at that time, because I wasn't with her father. I didn't have any like real family support in terms of like babysitting. And a lot of my friends at that time didn't have any kids. So it wasn't a situation where I could be like, hey, could, my daughter come over? Like, it just wasn't like that. And I had hit such a low point in my life where choices that I made, where I lost everything, literally. Mm-hmm. I left out of my situation with my car and my kid, and I kind of didn't even want the kid. So it just was, because I just couldn't fathom, like, how the hell am I supposed to do this? And like you said, being a single parent from a middle perspective, when you go into these services and you're like, I need help, they're like, well, you make too much money. And at the time I was only making like $46,000. And so, but that's still above poverty. But it was above what I could receive in terms of any help. And I was like, I like, but as we know, in the DMV area, $46,000 is not enough for me to do anything. And so I ended up having to go back home to my father's house, and me and my daughter, we stayed in the basement and, shared a room. And it was such a humiliating time for me, because here I was, I had a master's degree, I had a nice job, quote unquote, and I literally was in transition. I had nothing to show for it because of some bad choices that I made. And so being able to know that there would have been maybe a community out there or something, or maybe that could have been the housing that I went to rather than going back home, and had a community of sisterhood, could have perhaps quite started my healing journey a little bit earlier than when it did in my terms of recovery. So I think that's a great idea.
I have one final thing. There's personal development included in that as well, to help to heal the woman, so that to build upon that foundation, so that when you leave out, it's just like there's nothing holding you back.
Yeah.
There's nothing holding you back.
Can either one of you or both of you talk about any stigma that you experienced from your friends, from your family, when you returned from prison? Were they, oh, you've just been gone for a little bit, or was there real? Because I have experience with patients, and I'm just wondering, particularly in the middle class space, did people want to distance themselves from you? Did it take them time to accept you back into social circles? What was that social readjustment like?
Do you want to go first? Okay. So for me, where I come from, you don't go to jail, right? So you go to jail is like this whole black, dirty, negative, and not, when I say black, I mean as though like they look at you like this bad omen is around you, right? So it's like you're tinted. Don't go around her, she's been in jail. That's the bad person. And so it's there from when I was in jail. I kept hearing things like the friends that kept in touch, one or two friends that kept in touch with me, they told me, oh, Mimi, people are sharing links, right, about your incarceration. People are talking about it, and they're saying all these different things. I had people that stopped talking to me. People didn't want to have anything to do with me, right? And I'm in the country all by myself. I've been in America since I was 18, all by myself, right? And so getting out of jail, the energy was still the same, them moving away, but now I see some of them trying to come back as, oh, well, I heard this happened to you. I heard this, you were in jail, but where were you when I was in there? Where were you when I needed you? You know what I mean? So yeah, it's different. I wouldn't say it's the same as it was when I went out, before I went in. And upon getting out, I mean, I'm still adjusting. Like I said, I haven't been out for a whole year, so I'm still adjusting back to society, but it's very different. It isn't the same.
So for me, I'm a very private person. So like when I was going through my divorce, no one knew I was going through my divorce. So very much like going through the whole incarceration thing, no one knew about that either. And really they were back to back. So it was the divorce and then the incarceration. So I didn't really share it with anyone, honestly. And so my family, I told them that you're free to share it with whomever you want to share it with. But because, I'm here in DC and I'm a transplant, and at the time of my incarceration, I'd only been here 2 years. So really the only people who knew about my incarceration was like my employer, the owner of the company, maybe a couple people at the company that I work for. My sister also works at the same company, so of course she knew about it. And so, but like the moms at the school, my daughter's school, I told one person. My ex-husband showed up and took my daughter out of school. He wasn't supposed to do that, but shows up with the police. And so they all knew about it, or a lot of them, because he kind of made a scene. And so I just, I really just walked out, and I'm like, I just kept my head held up. Like, that was all I could do. And so even if they wanted to treat me differently, I just kind of worked really hard to just kind of maintain like a sense of normalcy for myself. So I really didn't allow that to really affect me. I just kind of just kept showing up like, okay, whatever they think, I don't know what they think, and I don't want to know what they think, and I really don't care what they think. And that was just kind of the attitude that I had. And so really, because I didn't make a big deal out of it, people just kind of had to fall in line, really. So even if they knew, no one was like bold enough to talk to me about it. Like I haven't had anyone ask me about it. And then like at my old job, like I returned to my old job and people were like, oh, it's great that you're back and we missed you. And no one asked. No one, you know, I had one person who kind of wanted to know, and then I don't even remember what my response was, but I just kind of moved around it and said I had some things that I needed to take care of, and I'm back and I'm better than ever. And that was just kind of how I handled it. But in terms of like my extended family, they're like out of state, they've all been really supportive. And like my immediate family has been, they've been awesome. Like my mom, like I said, I didn't have like a lot of experience with incarceration, but it was like through my experience, you know, my family has become that much more sensitive to like the challenges that people who are incarcerated have or what they face. And so, you know, they've started, you know, trying to get involved. And so I have this new internship with this organization called the Frederick Douglass Project for Justice. And actually one of the founders of the Pivot Program has started this nonprofit. And so the idea behind the nonprofit is to help people to recognize the humanity in those who are incarcerated by bringing people from the outside in so that they can kind of share in that experience and kind of see that you have like normal people in prison. Like everyone's not a monster like you kind of think they are, much like, you know, Dr. T was saying, you know, and so when people have that opportunity to kind of get in that space, then they realize that there's nothing to be afraid of. And so, you know, for me, it hasn't been that bad. Honestly, it hasn't been a horrible experience.
Dr. T, can you talk a little bit about like, these are really bright, resilient women and their story, but there's another piece of like, and Chandra, you kind of touched on it a little bit about just the trauma of reentry. And can you help like our listeners understand that trauma, and then where and how they can get resources if you got somebody coming out, just the like the whole thing about being in the cell that's 8x7 versus a big house. And that's actually like a traumatic experience, and like that, it's how important it might be to get that mental health support.
Absolutely. We talk about, I think it was Mimi who mentioned the word institutionalization, and you know, that happens to our kids every day in school. It happens to us, but when you go to something like prison, where in order to survive, to some degree, you have to conform, but you have to also try to hold on to that little piece of your individuality and your humanity, but not express it. The kind of fortitude that it takes to walk that walk each and every day is remarkable. And then when you come out and you feel like you're finally going to be able to get back to yourself, but everybody else is treating you like you're somebody else, it can be daunting. And so it's critical. I'm glad both of these ladies spoke to different spectrums of what it's like to re-enter, where it can be very difficult and you're starting over, if you will, with friendships, and another extended, you know, end of the spectrum where it just was kind of like, oh, nobody's going to talk about it. But that, you know, that elephant in the room might come up someday, right? And so I think helping us understand that the people we loved and the people we cared about, they've had a difficult experience, but that doesn't change how you love them. It may change what support they need from you. It may change what they ask of you. But if you loved them before, you can still love them after. And so have an open dialogue, because the more open we are able to be with each other, the more we can rely on each other, the more we can support each other. So if you can't do that, then get a therapist to help you come together as a family and say, you know, this thing happened and we're just not exactly sure how to deal with it. It might only be one session just to put the elephant in the room and everybody get comfortable with dealing with the elephant in the room. Or it might be more extended, but this is definitely a time where mental health supports could be beneficial to the family, to the kids, because the kids have to figure out how to explain where mom's been, right? She hasn't been coming to PTA events, and now all of a sudden she's coming and running for president, right? And so everybody that your life has touched, potentially could benefit from supporting you and getting support in the reentry process.
Ladies, we really appreciate having you on the show today. If you could just kind of close us out in regards to just anything that you would want someone to know in terms of just where you were, the space, the decision that you made, and oftentimes, especially, as women, because I too have trusted and done some things that cost me a whole lot of money to get out of. And so, Mimi, if you could just start us off with just like anything you'd want to share, anything you would want someone to know in terms of how you were able, or what you were able to tell yourself going through that experience to maybe help someone else be able to get through it as well.
I would say not to give up and not to think it's the end of the world for you. Because for me, the Georgetown program didn't start when I got out. It started when I was in there. So I don't know if you know about the Inside Out prison justice system, the prison justice program that the Georgetown does. And that's when I started taking classes, right, with Georgetown University and Howard University as well with Dr. Muhammad. But,
Dr. Muhammad, she's a friend of the show.
Oh, is she? Yes, she's wonderful. And so, like, being in that space, like I said, even at the time I thought this was the end for me, right? And then I couldn't continue my goals and everything. Just not giving up, still continuing school in that space, still looking forward to, yes, one day I'll be out of this place and one day everything is going to get better. I kept pushing. And if I'd given up, I doubt that I would be where I am now, right? Because I had times that I felt like, you know what, this is it for me. I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. Nothing is going to work out. Even if I get out there, it will never be the same again. But I never gave up. I had to keep pushing, right? So just keep believing and trust the process, and trust that there's always, it's cliche, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but there truly is a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Just believe that better things are always yet to come. Better things are here now, and there are more coming.
Chandra?
I have to agree with Mimi. You absolutely have to keep pushing. Like from the day that I walked into prison, I had a plan. My plan was to get out of there, and to get out of there a better, more empowered version of myself, just with a stronger, deeper understanding of who I am and what's really important to me and what I'm going to accomplish on the other side of this experience. And so, like Mimi, I took as many classes I could while I was there. The facility that I was at, unfortunately, didn't have, a program as incredible as like the Inside Out program. Really, the programming was abysmal, but I made the best of it. It's like, okay, well, I'm gonna take whatever classes I can while I'm here. And so that's what I did. And that was how I occupied my time, and so it definitely helped to keep me just like focused and encouraged. And then I also have to say that, my spirituality was like incredibly important at that particular time. I mean, like my faith is definitely what helped to get me through it. And after my release, I had a plan. I knew what I was going to do. I knew that I was going to get into the Pivot program. It wasn't a question. It's not like if I get into the Pivot program. It was like when I get into the Pivot program. Like I knew that's what I was going to do, because it just felt like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like this is the next step in in this journey. And so, and thank God it proved to be true. And one of the most incredible things about the Pivot program was the fact that the whole idea behind the Pivot program is to change the narrative. And so at every step of the way, they have encouraged us to share our story and to tell our story, to become familiar with our story. And I think that for other people, whether you're in the Pivot program or any program, I think it's important to recognize that it doesn't matter what happened in the past. Like you're not your past. You're not the sum total of your past. Your past is that. It's something to learn from, but what are you going to do on the other side of it? Like what's next for you? And, and to just continue to look forward and to recognize that just because you have, a past, it doesn't mean that your past can't help somebody else. It doesn't mean that your story can't be a blessing to someone else. And so, you know, the more you become comfortable with your story, I think the more empowered you become, and it becomes that much more difficult for other people to pull you down or to make you feel bad about your story, right? Because you said it, like, we've all done things that we're ashamed of, but for most of us, you know, people don't find out about it. You know, and Mimi's, in my case, people do find out about whatever. You know, Mimi's situation is a little bit different, but, you know, I did make choices that led me to incarceration, choices that I'll never make again. But it's like, you know, it's a bad choice. There were horrible choices, you know what I mean? As far as I'm concerned. I mean, I didn't kill anybody or anything like that, but for me, it was horrible because it took me away from my children. But, you know, I would say that to just truly just embrace who you are and trust that, you know, your past is just that, and that the only person who can define your story is you. And so if you get out ahead of it and you tell your story, then that's it. And so, you know, that would be my suggestion, my advice. Just embrace your story and to keep moving forward. Don't look back.
Pietra, any last words you want to just leave about the program or anything you want to add?
You know, I guess the one thing I would add is that, you know, while we work together with these remarkable individuals every day, you know, we have parallel work that's happening at the same time, and that is trying to engage our local business community as partners. You know, we have horrible levels of systemic racism in our criminal justice system, with African Americans disadvantaged at virtually every step, you know, whether it's the levels of arrests or the sentencings or the traffic stops. I mean, everybody knows all of this, right? So you have this level of injustice in our criminal justice system that is kind of alongside all of the barriers that people of color and formerly incarcerated people face in trying to enter employment. Okay? And so a big part of our work is to try to get out in front of the business community to say, look, we are asking you to not judge people by categories. We're asking you to judge them by what they can bring to your organizations, the skills they have, the motivation they have. And I think that little by little, what corporations need to understand, you know, we don't really need them to make a lot more statements about, you know, we're on board with Black Lives Matter, or we're on board with racial justice. What we need them to do is open up their minds in their hiring practices, open up their minds in their human resource policies, so that they have access to the widest possible pool of talent. Okay? And that's the message, you know, for the business community, again, is come talk to us, come meet people like, you know, Chandra and Mimi. Because without employment partners, you know, what we can achieve is going to be limited.
Yeah, and what I would say is a reminder to everyone who's listening, because if you're a person of color, Black, Hispanic, whatever, I would imagine there's much less than 6 degrees of separation with you knowing someone who's been incarcerated, right? And so we all know someone, and what hopefully you gain today is that there are resources available. Every state looks different. Every city may not have something as extensive as the Pivot program, but every state does have some kind of Department of Employment Services, and usually has some kind of office for, they call them returning citizens, right? People who are being released from incarceration. And there are supports available. As Chandra and Mimi said, they may be more robust in some institutions in helping connect you back to your community. And some places, they say goodbye and then you figure even out how to get home, right? And so, but the thing that this program can teach us is that there are resources available for people who are leaving incarceration and who want to get back to living a fulfilled life and who want to give back to their community. And we, as the ones who are grateful to not have gone that way, have to support those, whether it's personally providing information as Chandra's sister did, or just creating a welcome community when they come home, we have to help be that bridge and provide information and help them use the resources and learn about the resources that are available to those who are returning to our communities.
Okay, I got two things. So one, I think this is so timely. Well, before my two things, this is so timely because you guys' story, I think, is a light to even our current day situation. And so my two things are, reframe, to take from Dr. T, always says reframing, and choosing your narrative. So reframing, because you guys walked into prison, and I have been in prisons. It is daunting when you get in that physical cement block space. It is soul crushing. Even in a nice prison, even in the Connecticut prisons, it's still whoa, I'm locked down. I just work here and I don't feel safe and I feel closed in on. So I would say just the fact, the resiliency and the hope that you have, that you could walk in that and be okay, day one, let's go. That alone, that's a light for where we are right now. We can all do that right now. With as bad as things are, we can probably take from that and reframe this moment for all of us in America. And then the second one, choosing the narrative, that you guys chose to say, okay, I know where I'm at. I'm not running from where I'm at. I'm accepting it. I mean, Chandra and Mimi, you both have y'all jumping out at me in that you're choosing your narrative. You're choosing how to tell your story. And in choosing that narrative, you're amplifying that story. And I think it's important that you continue to just amplify that story so that we can all see, because I think sometimes, especially middle class, upper middle class, whatever, Black folk specifically, I'm gonna speak to Black people, we don't, if we haven't been in the system, it would shock you how many normal, and I air quotes, normal people are really, really in the system, especially Black women. It's folks just like everybody on this call that are locked up, that are doctors, lawyers, all kinds of things. So seeing the humanity in y'all and just being able to see, oh, okay, we need to know about you guys in the system, because that's what's going to be the impetus for us to get up and start doing the work to help get you out of the system and help our family members and our community thrive once they get out. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The women you described were my friends.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think just to close it out and add, I mean, Star took the words right out of my mouth when we talk about humanity. One of the reasons why I thought this would be such a great conversation is because of wanting to humanize the fact that people make mistakes. And I love the fact that, you both, it's not only, as Star said, as Dr. T said, reframing, choosing to look at things differently, having that hope, but then also being able to take accountability for, hey, I've made some bad decisions, but here is how I can change that narrative. And so I definitely honor you both. I thank you for coming on. And this has been great, and I appreciate you being willing to share your story and say how you basically, have been able to see the light at the end of the tunnel and create opportunity even from a place where it didn't seem like any existed. So we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. This has been awesome.
I agree.
Thank you so much for your interest in our program.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Sasha, we waiting for you to say your
Oh, and we out. Hey.